Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the Committee of the Whole meeting for the City of Lacombe, Monday, April 3rd. It is 5:31 p.m. and I'll call the meeting to order. Everybody's had an opportunity to look at the agenda. Any other items for consideration? Councillor Connick.
Thank you, Mayor Creasy. I'd just like to add an in-camera for land, please, if we could.
Very good. Thank you. Councillor Hoekstra.
Thanks, Mayor Creasy. I would like to add FCM as somewhere, wherever you want to put it.
Okay. Discussion item. I guess I'll just towards the end of 4.4.
Sure. Thank you.
Anyone else? CAO Gowdy.
So one item that is not on this evening's agenda that you rightfully could have expected to be here was the update on tax incentives. You had originally passed a motion to set a committee meeting for March 20th. That was later delayed. We are partnering with MacEwan University to have some of their students do projects on it. They pushed back the deadline, and so we had asked, and council agreed, to push that March 20th to this April meeting. And unfortunately, we do not yet have the final reports that we're expecting. So we will have something, no matter what, for you at the next council meeting. That's right. Yes. But we don't have it this evening, and I apologize. We had fully intended to do so, but we're hoping that some of the information we get might be germane to council's consideration of the topic.
I appreciate that. Being it wasn't on the agenda, I don't think there's any expectations, but thanks for bringing us up to date. So with respect to the agenda then, could I get one of our few motions put to us this evening? Councillor Gullickson.
I'll move that we accept the agenda as amended.
Thank you. Are we're actually even using the machines tonight? Isn't that unexpected and quite wonderful? Well, very good. You can go ahead and vote whenever choose. Expect that will be all green, so unanimous. Thanks, everyone. Manager Mitchell is waiting in the wings here, and the first item up is the 2023 roads program and a case study of 58th Street for discussion. Director Thompson.
Thanks, Mayor Creasy. Just as Manager Mitchell's getting settled there, I just wanted to thank Council for the opportunity to present on the asset management program and specifically the capital works program for this year. The timing is good because we were already mulling over the idea of making a presentation at an upcoming asset management conference highlighting Lacombe's asset management program. And we did decide, because of the question that really solidified for us, that 58th Street would make a great case study and topic for that presentation. And so because of that, it made the decision easy for us to go ahead and develop a slide deck and then a little bit more of a presentation style format on that decision. And so that's the reason why you'd see it tonight in a presentation format rather than the typical council report format. So with that, I'd like to invite Manager Mitchell to do the presentation.
Thank you, Director Thompson, and thank you, Mayor Creasy, and good evening, members of council. As Director Thompson noted, at the last council meeting, some questions came out regarding the 58th Street construction project and the decision to remove one block of paving. I wasn't in attendance, but I was informed that it created some good discussion about our decision to defer. And so I did want to take this opportunity to present this as a case study as to why administration makes the decisions we do, kind of peel back the curtain a bit and help you understand some of the considerations that go into planning these projects. And I'm told I have a clicker here, so there we go. So I'd like to start with clarifying the scope for 58th Street, for the 58th Street project, and just confirm that we haven't removed all of 58th Street, we've just removed a block of it. So the pre-design scope showed that the sections in purple required some sewer rehabilitation and the sections in green would just be road rehabilitation. Once we move through detailed design, I changed my recommendations to change that first block of road from 50th Ave to 51st Ave to a full sewer reconstruction, and to remove the last block of construction, which is from Fairway Drive to North Star Drive. So you can kind of see the comparison from the top and the bottom there. So the goal of this presentation is to focus on why the first block was recommended for reconstruction while the second block was deferred, when at surface level, they seem very similar. So as council is aware, over the last several years, administration has been working on an asset management program for the city. To date, we have completed a full asset assessment of our road assets and are using that to inform our 10-year capital works plan. The principles of this plan can be summarized as follows. We want to prioritize road spending where it benefits the most drivers and results in the highest road condition improvement per dollar spent. That means we're focusing our spending on roads with higher traffic, and as a result, roads with lower traffic may fall into poor or very poor condition. It also means that when we identify roads that require full reconstruction, we will defer them in order to use up their full remaining useful life. This will result in the conditions of those roads worsening before they are repaired, but in the meantime, it will allow us to improve up to 5 times more roads elsewhere in the city. There are a few things that can trigger that full road reconstruction. The first is the condition of the road itself. Asphalt can deteriorate where it's beyond where it can be rehabilitated. Or what's more common in Lacombe is that we don't have sufficient base. So that's the gravel structure and underneath the road is not sufficient to support a new road. So we can remove that asphalt and put new asphalt down, but that's really a Band-Aid patch. And in a few years, you'll see all that cracking and potholes and issues come right back through. And so when we find that, we determined that we have a need for a full road reconstruction. The next reason is that the underground utilities, such as water, sewer, or storm, require replacement. They're either near or at the end of their useful life. And when replacing those, as you can imagine, we have to dig up a very large portion of the road. And so in essence, we're essentially rebuilding the road. And so our goal is to defer those projects until either the road or the utility is at the end of its useful life, so we can really maximize their lifespan. So that's why we deferred one and accelerated the other. So right here, this is the priority ranking system that we have for the roads asset management plan. We're much farther along with the roads infrastructure than we are with any other class of infrastructure. So right now we're deferring to roads when forming our 10-year capital plan. The roads projects are determined using this priority ranking system. So we classify the roads based on points. And in step 1, points are assigned based on the road class. So is that road an arterial road, a collector road, or a local road? The higher the use, the more points it gets. We also look at, is it on the snow clearing priority list? If it's a priority 1, 2, or 3, with 1 being the highest, it'll get the most points, 3 getting the lowest points. And then we also look and see, is it in the downtown area? If it's in the downtown area, it gets a little extra half a point. Step 2, we actually look at the condition of the roads. So the roads are rated on what's called a pavement condition index, and that's a score out of 100. And so we look at that, and then we also look at the remaining service life of that road, which is essentially how long before full reconstruction is triggered. Roads that are already there get 0 points. We know we have to reconstruct them. We're going to let them continue to go. Roads that have 1 to 5 years left, they get 2 points. They need to be addressed in the next 5 years, or we're going to have to put a lot more money into them. Roads that have 6 to 10 years left, they get 1 point. They might be an important collector road that we don't want to allow to get into poor condition, so they still get a point. Roads with more than 10 years also get 0 points. We can deal with them later on. Step 3 looks at the cost of rehabilitation. So we basically divide the score by the cost per meter of a rehabilitation. With something like a mill and pave, which where you just take off the top 2 inches and put new asphalt down, it costs around $26 a square meter. Where a thick overlay might be $55 a square meter, and a full reconstruction is somewhere in the $120 to $160 per square meter. So you can see the cost of rehabilitation really lowers that average score. So we then use this to form our plan. Now, this is what the algorithm spits out. And I don't know, there we go. We do have a circle, good. As you can see, I've circled 58th Street, and you can kind of see here how the algorithm has recommended that we recreate reclimate various blocks based on different years. Now, I'm sure council can appreciate the uproar from the public if we did half a block 1 year, and then 2 years later did half a block, and then skipped a little section in between and jumped all around. And I mean, it's not cost efficient, it's not time efficient, and the headache to the public would just be incredible. And so part of my job is to cluster these roads together in groups that make sense, and that maximize our dollar and minimize impact to the public. So that's kind of where we got all of 58th Street happening this year. Once I've determined those clustered or those groups, we then move into detailed design. Now, during detailed design, we have a couple of other considerations. The first is deep utilities. Right now, we don't have great data on our underground infrastructure. So water, sanitary, sewer, and storm, a lot of it is a mystery until we camera these lines. And as I said, that happens during detailed design. So the way we investigate the condition of our water mains is based on the material type. There's no real way to get in and get a camera inside them and have a look at what condition your water mains are. So we look at the material type, we look at the age, and we look at the break history. We have a rough idea of how long each type of pipe should last. And if our public work crews are out there regularly fixing it, we know it's nearing the end of its life. That's kind of what we do for water. For sanitary, sewer, and storm, we can actually get a robotic CCTV camera inside, and they drive down the pipe and they provide the video back to us in reports that tell us the condition of those pipes. And then the last and final consideration is shallow utility conflicts. And during detailed design, we get locates done, and then we have a surveyor go out and pick up the locates and look for conflicts with those shallow utilities in regards to the repairs for our underground infrastructure. And one specific one we look for is ATCO Gas. We do have an agreement with ATCO Gas, and if we give them a year's notice, they will relocate their lines at their cost. Less than a year's notice, we've got to pay for it. There are other shallow utilities such as TELUS, Fortis, Bell, Shaw. Those ones vary. Sometimes we pay, sometimes they pay, sometimes it's a shared cost. Regardless, it always takes months to coordinate. So let's hop right into the case study. Why did we select the section from 50th Ave to 51st Ave and not the section from Fairway Drive to North Star? So what I've got up here is some lovely pictures for you guys who've just finished dinner that show the condition of our sewer main. So the picture on the left is taken out of a report that I received from the third party that cameraed our sewer main, and it identifies the entire main as orange, which indicates poor condition. And then you can see several sections along where they've noted instances of where the sewer sagged, where there's root intrusions, where there's a tap. And I've included some pictures for council's reference. So in the first picture, it shows a root ball that blocks approximately 55% of the pipe. The second and fourth pictures show severe cracking at different locations. And the third photo represents a poor service installation. We call them tap-ins, where a service line has been tapped into the line. And in this case, it's interfering with about 50% or 40% of the pipe's capacity. In the first and third picture, you can also see that the pipes are approximately 1/3 full. And that often indicates that there's a sag in the line. The pipes aren't full unless there's flow coming, but if they're constantly sitting full, it means the line's actually sagged down. And as you can imagine, when a line sags, it's constantly full. There's the water can't drain out. And so that reduces the pipe's overall capacity. And so when we look at situations like this, we have to make the decision, do we need that additional capacity? We build our sewers to a minimum size. No, none of our sewers are less than 200 millimeters diameter. Not all of our sewers need to be 200 millimeters in diameter for operations. They do need to be for cleaning and flushing and those kind of things, but they don't need that capacity for sure. So those are some of the things we look at. This line, interesting enough, it wasn't the SAGs that determined it. If this is at the start of a line, there's not a lot of services on it. If it was just the SAGs, I would have said go ahead and line the pipe and we'd be good to go. But the other deficiencies, the breaks, the intrusions, the root balls, all those kind of things led me to conclude that this is a sewer that's at the end of its life and it needs replacement. So now we'll look at the section, I should say sections of sewer from Fairway Drive to North Star. Now you can see these are illustrated on the right. And here green indicates good. So the majority of these lines are actually in good condition. The line where you see that has some red subsections, that's a Victaulic clay pipe. And so those are a lot of our older sewers in Lacombe are Victaulic clay pipes, a little bit more prone to the breaking that you see than the sewer beside it, which is a PVC pipe. Those being plastic pipes, we don't often see that kind of failure in them. And so the first picture represents some minor root intrusion. The second picture is a picture of a sag, and I will say this is not the worst sag on the line. It's a picture where the camera wasn't underwater, so you can clearly see what I'm talking about when I say a sag. And the third picture represents the one and only break along this line, which does need repair. This is where a lot of our I&I or our infiltration comes from when we find mystery water. It's breaks like this in our system. And then the fourth picture is the picture of the yellow sections on our PVC pipe, and they just need a really good flushing. It's debris buildup. Yellow means fair condition. And if I didn't mention it before, red means very poor condition. So as we got into detailed design, there were actually a number of things to consider with this pipeline. At face value, it looked similar to the first pipe where we thought, oh, we can just go in and we can fix that one major crack. Capacity is not a huge issue along here, at least not right now. So the SAGs aren't the biggest concern. But then we talked to our Public Works department, and they let us know that they're out there once a month flushing this line. They're getting blockages and backups, and so they've got to get their truck out there and they have to flush it. And then our consultant put the drawings together, and we took a look at the drawings. And initially, I thought the flushing was due to the SAGs, that they were taking up capacity in the line and it was causing backups upstream. But when we put the drawings together, we see that I've highlighted it in yellow, there's a section of pipe upstream that's very flat. And when you get very flat pipe, you sometimes get some of your solids settling out, and that can create blockages and backups when your flows are low. And so that's most likely where we're seeing our Public Works team going out once a month and flushing up by North Star is because of that flat section of pipe. So what I originally thought of is, hey, we can go dig this one section of busted up pipe and, fix this one section and maybe look at the SAGs if we really need to. And the SAGs would take about a third. They're all in that area that I've highlighted yellow. Became a much larger project. To properly fix the SAGs and the flat section line, we'd actually have to regrade the sewer along the whole block. So we can get a better grade if we go from the first manhole to the last manhole. And that's what I've kind of drawn in purple there. And it represents how that would really ultimately fix the maintenance issues that our Public Works team is seeing. It would fix the SAGs in the line, and obviously it would fix that one small broken piece of pipe. But when I looked at that, I took one more step back and I took another look at the drawings, and I saw we have 2 sewer lines in this road and 2 water mains in this road. If we're digging up this road already to fix one sewer main, we really should be looking and seeing if it's even possible to consolidate those sewer mains so that in the future we only have to deal with one sewer main. We only have one sewer main to maintain, we only have one sewer main to replace, and we only have one sewer main to repair. Same with water mains. This one I'm less certain that we can actually do something about, and I haven't fully investigated this, because I think it might be on 2 different pressure zones. But if there is a possibility to reduce it to a single line, I'd want to look at that before we dig up the entire road. Now, of course, all of this information comes out about 2 weeks before I tender. And so you've got to make the decision, does this project stay in? If it does, what do you do? Or do you move the next project in queue ahead and put a pause on this one until you can make the decision that's best for the city? And so I'll just walk you through the options that we considered before we made the call. The first option was that full replacement where we're going to replace block to block. We're going to look at it. Can we consolidate the sewers? Can we consolidate the water? We're ripping up the entire road, sidewalk to sidewalk, and it's going to cost like $2 million. Now, realistically, from the condition we saw in the pipe, that's not needed now. Those pipes really weren't in that bad a condition, especially for a clay pipe. In town, it had one break in it, and I guarantee you, if you camera most of the clay pipes in this city, it's probably one of the better ones you're going to see. So my argument is that it's not triggered now. It's a possibility. It's not off the table, but it's not needed now. We'd want to wait for the road to reach the end of its service life. Now, what will doing this? What will this option give us? It will fix the ongoing maintenance issues. It'll fix the SAG issues. It would allow us to consolidate, but it's expensive. So option number 2 was to look at a partial replacement, and I'm just going to zip back here. So when I say partial replacement, I'm essentially talking about the section I've got highlighted in red there. We wouldn't look at consolidating the sewer. We wouldn't look at consolidating the water. We'd just be replacing from manhole to manhole, getting rid of the sags. We'd actually drop that first manhole to where the pink line is. So we'd regrade that section that we're replacing so that in the future we could tie in and we could fix the upstream issues, but we wouldn't do it now. So we'd still have some ongoing maintenance issues, but it does allow for some future work. Again, this one's not needed right now. Other than that one crack, there's nothing that's critical on this particular section of pipe. The sags are operating decently well. So I'd say not even going to look at it for 5 years. Option 3, spot repair. I missed a critical piece of information for you earlier on. There's a gas line directly over top of this sewer. And that is one thing that I mentioned earlier, 1 year for ATCO to relocate. So the spot repair becomes challenging because there is, again, that gas line directly over the sewer we need to repair. So if we dig it up, we're looking at cutting out a section of road, disturbing the sidewalk, whatnot, and we still need to work with ATCO, which could take up to a year's notice in order to do that. Doesn't fix the ongoing maintenance issue, and the repair is a throwaway cost if we do decide that the sewer needs to be replaced in the next 10 years. Option 4, $280,000. Don't fix anything, just mill and pave, just go. Now the risk here is that crack is not insubstantial. And so there is a very high risk that we'd be digging into the sewer. I said in the next 10 years, I'd say even in the next 3 to 5 years, we'd be digging up that road to fix that broken section of pipe. That doesn't look good on the city. That doesn't look good on its administration. And we're digging up a brand new road, which severely reduces its life cycle. So again, not an ideal choice for me. So option 5 is to defer, monitor, and evaluate. And that's the option that I chose in presenting the Public Works Plan to Council. There's a couple of reasons for that. So I chose to include, as I stated earlier, the mains from 50th to 51st Ave because it's at the end of its life cycle. It's time and it makes sense. The road in Highway 12 was just repaved, and if we repaved all of 58th Street and left out that one little block there, you'd have some very upset citizens, and we don't want that. Now, Fairway Drive, however, provides a nice break in the work. We can pave all the way up to 58th Street, 58th Street all the way up to Fairway Drive and stop there and pause, take a second, regroup, and decide where we're going with this. And so I looked into the road condition report for the block beyond Fairway Drive, which is North Star to Woodland Drive. And I had a look at it, and it was on the cusp. Both sections of roads were on the cusp in this last road analysis. And one just by a hair made it onto the 10-year plan, and the other just by a hair didn't make it onto the 10-year plan. And so my proposal or my consideration is that we're doing another road review in 3 years. And in 3 years' time, I fully expect both sections of this road to be on the 10-year plan. And I think it makes more sense to do them together again for that same convenience to the public, doing large sections of road together, minimizing delays. And because that road does have some time left in it, we're not in a crunch where we have to address it now. So my call was to advance the road rehabilitations on 50th Street, which we've designed as a backup, which was approximately 470 meters, and it's from 52nd Ave to 56th Ave. It's planned for next year. We've advanced it to this year. So we're not doing less road this year. We're just doing a different section of road this year. And it's actually slightly longer than the section of road we planned for North Star. So that's my peek behind the curtain, and I'd be happy to answer any questions council may have.
Manager Mitchell, thank you for the report. Councillor Hoekstra, go ahead.
Thanks, Mayor Creasy. Yeah, first of all, thank you for talking my level. This makes a lot of sense. So just a couple of questions. First of all, that section between 50th and 51st Avenue, out of curiosity, how old is it, that sewer?
I believe it was installed in the 60s. I was actually trying to find the exact dates before I came up, and the houses in that area are installed between 64 and 66. So I would imagine the sewer is of a similar age.
Okay, I have another. And then the other thing that you mentioned was roads in Lacombe, when you say you find that it doesn't have a sufficient gravel base. Is that typical throughout our whole city or the older parts of the city? Are we inheriting a problem from the past? I don't know.
That's also a really good question, and probably a whole entire presentation on itself, or at least I could make it into one. There are definitely, I would say in the last 20 years, we've been a lot better at monitoring what's being put in for our roads, monitoring developers and development and that kind of thing. I'm looking at CAO Gowdy because his experience goes back farther than mine. But I will say that it's not uncommon for older roads that have been repaved multiple times to have 50 millimeters or even 100 millimeters of gravel in them, when ideally they would have 250 or 300 millimeters. And the great thing is that those roads actually still have stood the test of time. So even though they're not the recommended standard, in some cases we are still deciding to mill and pave them anyway, because they have held up well over 30 years. And despite engineering guidelines saying you should probably rebuild them to today's standard, we're looking at empirical evidence that says they've done well over the past. So we're, again, another way we're trying to stretch the city's dollars is looking at that.
So also for those road standards, is it fair to say that those can change over time too? Maybe when they were built X amount of years ago, they were thought to be perfectly fine. And since then, we've perhaps revised either the expectations or for various reasons, the specs have changed.
Yes, that's a very fair point. And I would say over time too, without fabrics and stuff like that, sometimes the horizons between different types of soil can start to blur as well. And where something was once originally 100% gravel, you might have infiltration of fines and stuff like that. That's no longer make it act that way. So that can also happen over time.
CEO Gowdy?
Yeah, I wouldn't say that it's specific to a time period or an area. Some of the new areas, even in Elizabeth Park, Director Thompson and I can attest, there are roads that have failures of various kinds throughout the city, and it's not necessarily bad contracting or bad developing or bad standards. You're constantly balancing cost versus the risk of failure, and sometimes there is a failure, and that will continue to happen even in new developments from time to time. So I don't want to sort of like cast aspersions on the past administration or anything to say, well, they accepted a lower standard. It was the standard of the day, and vehicles have gotten heavier and traffic has gotten faster, and for a variety of reasons, you see failures around still.
Councillor Hibbs? Oh, yeah, I'm sorry. I thought your light was on a minute ago. Councillor Dallas?
Thank you, Mayor Creasy. Thank you, Manager Mitchell. It was a great presentation. I guess, yeah, I don't know. I appreciate it. There's obviously the continued maintenance on these roads and for sanitary and water main breaks. It all plays a role on these timelines. So I think it's great that we are evaluating those costs as well. In regards to the sanitary, is there value in increasing the amount of CCTV that happens? Like I think our last percentage was 10% in 3 years, if I'm correct. Like in my mind, that takes 30 years to do the whole city. Would there be a reason to increase that?
There's definitely value, but the more you look, the more you will find. And so right now, what the current way we structure our plan, like I said, is based on roads. We identify the roads we need to, and then we investigate the underground infrastructure. We're more than paying our budget based on that. We are working on asset management plans where we'll take that first step back and look at age and material so we can start to identify some areas in Lacombe where we might need to start doing more CCTV. But until we kind of have that plan together, I think that we've got our hands full, if that answers your question.
Gio Gotti.
I would say it's also a process that when you look at it, it seems very computer heavy. It's actually still quite a manual process of someone standing there managing the robot and on a string, that he's you can imagine, and then someone actually physically goes through, like a technician goes through every second of the video and manually marks, oh, there's a crack, there's a whatever. You can imagine that there will be artificial intelligence approaches, and with video and automation becoming better, I think what you're saying might take 30 years. I think there will be a peak here in 5 to 10 years where suddenly it becomes very, very cheap to just go and do the whole city. Sort of the same as we've done to the road network, where you use technology to just drive all the roads and it automatically detects everything. I think there will be a similar approach to height assessment in the future.
Councillor Hibbs.
Thank you. Now I do have something, just a quick comment. I do really appreciate this presentation. I think it's excellent for us, as Councillor Hoekstra said, for us to really understand. And I also think that it's great for both us, but the public to just appreciate the complexity of the decisions that are made. People just don't have access to this information. They don't understand all what goes into making these decisions. Sometimes they just see something and they're like, oh, that's stupid, or why, you know what I mean? Like and I get it, but when you have this level of information, it just really, brings it home as to how these decisions are made, and they are so complex. I'm not like, they truly are multi-level. So I'm definitely going to be bookmarking this, and so if I have a conversation like this, I can show, even if it's not specifically that project, this still is relevant because I can show all the factors that go into making a decision. So I really do appreciate that this was brought to council. Thank you.
Manager Mitchell, just on one item there, you had said with the dual sewer lines on the case study road that they were at different pressures. I thought I heard. Is that correct? So do we have force mains within the city, within residential areas as well?
The water mains are on different pressures. We have
Thank
two
you.
pressure zones in the city. No, the sewer lines are at different depths. So you can actually see the second line on this drawing as well. It's the one on the bottom. I don't have it highlighted in any color. So there would be some considerations and some rejigging of services. You'd have to go with the lower sewer main if you consolidated the sewers, but it's potentially feasible.
That makes far better sense. Thank you for that clarification. Councillor Connick.
Thank you, Mayor Creasy. You made a comment that a lot of this is driven by road rehabilitation. So you decided to do a road and then you camera the sewer lines. But what about, there are areas of the city, like for example, where my mom lives, the sewer lines run in the back alley. So you're never going to look at that road. So what about areas like that in terms of, because I know that there's been a number of them who live on that block who've had backups. How do you address those areas? Because clearly you're not going to do a road rehabilitation in the back alley.
That's also a great question, Councillor Connick. We actually, for those ones, we rely on our feedback from Public Works. So if they're constantly out in an area and they're having challenges, they'll go out and they'll get it cameraed under the operations budget. And if they're seeing, that this sewer is at the end of its life, Chris's manager Houston is picking up the phone. He's talking to me. So we actually do have one alleyway sewer that we've identified for 2024 that isn't driven based on roads. And so that's based on the operation feedback we get. And again, our goal is to move that asset management forward. Water is our next asset class, sewer will be our next, and to develop those understandings, to start marking when we have digs over by Public Works so that we can pull up a screen and it can turn red where we've had all kinds of issues over the past few years. But it's a slow process, and we're chipping away a bit by bit.
So that one sewer in the alley, is that near the downtown behind some condos?
Yeah, it's 49B, I want to say, the alley behind 49B. I'd have to look at a map to confirm, but in that general area.
Thank you.
All right, so for my second item tonight, I will be presenting council with 5 implementation strategies. Tim, I think we can move this presentation off. Implementation strategies for the updated offsite levy bylaw. My goal for tonight is to generate some good conversation and narrow down options, selecting those that align with council's goals. As a brief overview, administration completed public consultation on the revised offsite levy rates from October to December of 2022. We reported what we heard to council in January of 2023. The most often repeated theme from developers and landowners was that the proposed rates were too high or that the timing of the updates was poor. Developers believe that the new rates will increase the cost of new housing, which makes land development projects less attractive and difficult in a difficult market and economy. Administration responded to some specific feedback from the public consultation by making 2 significant changes. The first was the way we apportion costs for infrastructure that benefits both the existing taxpayers and future development. We had originally proposed a split of 50% for arterial roads and facilities, but we have since modified that split to reflect an area-based calculation. Today, 55% of the developed land is owned by current taxpayers and 45% is allocated for future development. So the split we used was 55-45. The second major change was that originally water reservoirs and pump houses were fully attributed to new development, the thought being that they weren't needed until the new development came. However, administration does recognize that these facilities increase the redundancy in the water system and provide improved water supply and pressures to existing parts of the city, even if they are only triggered by new development. Due to these benefits to existing taxpayers, water reservoirs and pump houses will now also be attributed with the area-based calculation that is the same as arterial roads and facilities. That's the 55-45%, with developers paying 45%. These changes have reduced the average offsite levy rate significantly. Public consultation was based on the average offsite levy rate of $115,000 per hectare, which represented a 46% increase from the 2013 rate. The new proposed rate, accounting for the changes I just identified, is $86,000 per hectare, which is an increase of 10% from the 2013 rates. However, it should be noted that an increase of 10% is the average rate and that not all benefiting areas are impacted equally. The new method of apportioning costs does reduce the gap between the highest and lowest offsite rates in Lacombe, but this means that areas that previously had the lowest rates will see the greatest increase, while areas that previously had the highest rates actually see a decrease in their rate. The figure on page 2 illustrates the proposed changes by benefiting area. The shaded blue area shows the spread between the highest and lowest rates of the 2013 levy rates, and the red shaded area shows the spread between the highest and lowest of the proposed 2023 rates. As you can see, these changes result in more equitable rates across the city. On the graph, you can also see how benefiting areas 3 to 5, which previously had the lowest rates, will see their rates double or even triple. To help soften the immediate burden on developers, administration has prepared several rate implementation plans for council's consideration. The first option is to implement the new rates immediately. The proposed rates are based on engineering studies that determine the infrastructure requirements to support long-term growth over 20 years driven by development. These are the estimated costs attributed to actual growth. We have already consulted with the development community and landowners and incorporated their comments into the final rates, which has resulted in a significantly lower rate than originally proposed. I believe the proposed rates are fair and defensible and could be implemented immediately in a new offsite levy bylaw, if chosen. Option 2 is to maintain the current rates. Council could defer the offsite levy rate update and maintain the current 2013 levy rates. This is not recommended as the last update was completed 10 years ago, and both the offsite levy eligible projects and their costs have changed. Based on the Bank of Canada Consumer Price Index, inflation over the last 10 years was 27% alone, and that doesn't even contemplate the addition of new projects. So deferring the update would only compound the issue and result in even higher rate increases at the next update. Option 3 is to phase in the new rates. To ease the transition for benefiting areas that are seeing the most significant increase, administration prepared this phase-in option, where the rates will increase incrementally over a 3-year period instead of changing immediately upon passing of the bylaw. The first phase would include 35% of the rate increase. Now, that's of the increase, not the overall rate. So the ones that increase the most will see 35% of that gap. A year later, the levy would include 70% of the rate increase, and on the 3rd year, the full offsite levy rate increases would take effect. Now, administration is proposing that this option only apply to benefiting areas whose rate has increased. The new rates would come into immediate effect for all benefiting areas that had a rate reduction. Phase 4 is to phase the payment of offsite levies. This would help developers since they wouldn't have to front as much money before construction occurs, which lowers their carrying costs. However, the city would still get the full offsite levy payment eventually. 2 examples of municipalities that currently use this approach are the town of Strathmore and the town of Cochrane. Currently, Strathmore requires 30% of the offsite levies be paid at the signing of the development agreement, 30% at construction completion, and the full payment of all outstanding levies for the last 40% at the application for final acceptance certificate. Cochrane's plan is a little bit simpler, and it requires 40% of payment up front at the subdivision phase and 60% within a year of the subdivision endorsement. These are just 2 examples of ways we could phase levies. Option 5 is to introduce a 3 to 5 year development initiative with nominal rates. For example, council could choose to charge a nominal flat rate of between $1,000 and $10,000 per hectare for a specified amount of time, say 3 to 5 years. This is a more radical option that would signal to the development community that the city desires the development of construction-ready lots. During challenging economic times, development does not stop entirely, but developers are much more selective about which projects they undertake. Charging a minimal offsite levy could make Lacombe more attractive and demonstrate to developers that the city wants their investment. The benefit for the city of having construction-ready lots is that when the economy does pick up and there is a demand for new homes, communities with available lots will be 1 to 2 years ahead of all other communities. It takes approximately 4 to 6 years to engage, or 4 to 6 months, sorry, to engage an engineer and get subdivision drawings approved, and another year to advance those drawings into construction to a point where homes can be started. This option may also allow developers to offer discounted lots in Lacombe. However, the city has no control over how the developers price those lots. Now, as we reported last September, administration did review the average 10-year growth rate for our comparators and found no direct correlation between the offsite levy rate and the growth rate. Olds had the lowest offsite levy rate by far. They're only $11,000 per hectare, but they were 6th out of 10 when it comes to growth rates. We believe that there are many other factors that both developers and home builders consider, so a rate reduction is not a guarantee of additional developments. Tonight, I'm looking for council's feedback on which options are preferable and which can be eliminated. Several of the options could even be combined to provide additional benefit to the development community. If there is consensus, administration will take the feedback provided at this meeting and use it to finalize our offsite levy bylaw update for Q2 of this year. I'm happy to answer any questions council may have at this time.
Thanks, Manager Mitchell. Councillor Gluckson, go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor Creasy. Manager Mitchell, you talked about how when it's going down, the rate drops as part of this plan, would happen immediately. And the other part where it goes up is in percentages. Do we lose revenue at that point? That we would be getting right now, for example?
The answer I'll give you is it depends. It depends on which developments go forward and which ones don't. If all the developments across Lacombe went forward, yes, there would be a net loss in money, in that the lower ones aren't offsetting the costs of the higher ones. However, when we looked at it, if you were a developer and you saw that your rate was reducing slowly over 3 years, it's not much of an incentive to get your plan out the door this year. And so that's why we made the call to say those that are getting a rate reduction, that will happen immediately. So there's no incentive for them to defer or delay construction if they were imminently planning to move forward with some projects. Those that do see increases, that gives them some incentive to move up their projects so that they can move their projects through the system before the full rate hits. So it's seen as an incentive to accelerate development.
CEO Gowdy.
And I would also say there's no loss per se. There's a foregoing of contributions that would otherwise possibly have been collected. So it's not like the municipality's out of pocket. It's just you're collecting less than you could under the higher rate, which eventually will be out of pocket.
Councillor Gluckson, did you have some follow-up?
No.
Very good. Councillor Dallas.
Thank you, Mayor Creasy. I guess I have a few questions. Again, the first one's not really a statement, or is more of a statement. The presentation from our last meeting where we kind of heard that 50% of people are commuting. I feel like reducing to lower rates is likely not going to drive development in our community, and unless there was some sort of change in our industry in the area. That's just my personal opinion. So I think we may as well achieve fair rates that are responsible for our community. I guess if we did choose the option 3 with the phase in, is this difficult for administration to continually change the rates each year? Or is it just a matter of changing that calculation when applying?
So that's a great question. So when we'd issue the development agreement, it would be clear on that. When I passed the bylaw, it would basically have 3 rate tables. So the rate table would say in 2023 the rate is this, in 2024 the rate is this, in 2025 the rate is this, and so we could just pull up the bylaw and look by year of the application. So it wouldn't be that onerous.
Okay, thank you. And then I guess based on option 4, would there be, okay, I see it in here, so I think obviously there must be some sort of benefit seen in it. Can we do 2 options with the phase in as well as the phase the payments, or is it just kind of one or the other?
You can do whatever you want. Yes, yeah, you could both phase the payments and phase the rate increases. With the phasing of the payments, that's a matter of when the offsite levy is paid. With the phasing of the rates, that's a matter of how much.
Okay. Yeah, follow up one more.
Certainly.
Okay,
Go ahead.
and then is there risk involved with the phasing of payments versus just getting one outright payment?
There's always risk when the money is not in your pocket, but there are a number of things that if this option was selected, that administration will look at, some checks and balances. We do have the ability to withhold building certificates and allowing homes to be built on a lot. So if a home can't be built, the developer can't sell it. So that's a good incentive for them to pay their outstanding offsite levies. If a lot or developer were to go bankrupt, you can sell the land with the offsite levies remaining unpaid, and so that would be a condition that would go with the land. So there are ways to mitigate that risk, but it does increase the risk slightly.
Thank you very much.
Gio Gaudi.
Yes, thanks, Mayor Creasy. So with this being a report to committee, there's not the normal provision of a recommendation that we would have a written recommendation for you. But with 5 different options, I think it's probably has some value to provide some recommendation. And so I would say for me, and this also reflects discussions we've had, implement new rates immediately. Yeah, that's a little bit of a shock. The market really values stability.
I value what you're speaking about here, but if it's going to be a recommendation, I'm going to have you wait until the end after the input from the
Sure.
councillors.
Yes.
Thank you. I appreciate it, but I'm sure there's value in it, but I think it would be, being some have spoke on their likes and dislikes, I think it would be more appropriate to wait until the end. Okay. Councillor Connick.
Thank you, Mayor Creasy. Thank you, Councillor Dallas, for that question. That was one of my questions as well, if there could be a combination between like a 3 and a 4. I did want clarification on one thing. So option 1 says implement new rates immediately, and option 3 says phase in of the new rates. But to be clear, the new rates is the reduction. It's the 86. Okay, thank you. I just wanted to be absolutely clear on that. I would also agree with Councillor Dallas. I don't think we can maintain status quo. I think there has to be an increase, but I do like the phase in approach of option 3, and I don't mind the option 4 as well. I think that, I mean, if there's something that would help spur on some development that way, so that they can make those payments in two payments as opposed to one, I'm not opposed to that either. And that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Ross.
Thank you, Mayor Creasy. I still will always say that there is, in order to inspire developers, it's business, it's profit, it's initiative. There's got to be business advantages come being in Lacombe. But I guess from the outside looking in, are we lacking ready lots? Obviously, we have industrial lots. There are subdivisions that are filling up at Elizabeth Park. You're going to have different levels of housing requirements or choices of individuals upon their personal household economics. But I guess I look from the outside looking in, 5-10 years ago, there was far more ready residential lots. That should we be more proactive to the incentives of a developer to try to initiate that reaction because fine, inflation may be high, interest rates may be higher, but within 2 to 3 years, as we've been, will probably obviously be lower. I want to see Lacombe in a position that we have ready lots, which I think we should be more aggressive to the developer. Because I feel possibly like back 15 years ago, we lost out on a lot because of not having ready lots compared to the growth of our neighbors to the south. During that time period, I think there was a lack of ready lots that gave them the advantage. So I would be more in favor to the developer initiatives.
Thank you, Councillor Hibbs.
Thank you, Mayor Creasy. Yeah, a question about option 4. I find that one very interesting. You do mention 2 municipalities that have that. Is there only 2 municipalities that do that, or are there multiple municipalities that run that option?
There are likely multiple. Those are the only 2 I looked at for this report, but I believe it's relatively common.
Okay, I guess that's my only like hesitation, is if it was only just 2, I'd be going to go like why and how long have they been doing it? But if it is somewhat common, but you know, not necessarily widespread, but as long as there's been some history there, I'm very intrigued by that option. I think we should explore it, and I do also support the interest in option 3 as well.
So for me, I don't think that option 1 is anybody's best interest. Maintain current rates. Sure, we'd all love to. The simple fact of the matter is that bigger communities, as they grow, require more infrastructure, and there has to be a methodology put in place whereby those that are making use of that new infrastructure are paying a proportionally higher amount, this is kind of the balancing act that we're up against, in my opinion, anyway. So yeah, 2 is out. The phase-in part here for me, I was just curious. I like the concept of it. I'm just wondering, is a year apart really enough time? I mean, we're halfway through 22, and this starts in June 23. Is there going to be enough uptake on that to even have it to warrant the discussion? Like if maybe stretching out a little, maybe 2 years per each one, or do we have any on the goal that this is going to apply to? I mean, that's fine if it's a 1 lot thing or something, but for subdivision type stuff, is this time frame a little too condensed? I'm just asking a question because I genuinely don't know, but I like the idea of it. The phase, the payment part. I'm not opposed to it. I just don't know that it necessarily. I think I like the idea of option 3 a little more than it. Although I'm not opposed to 4 as well. Councillor Gullickson.
Thank you, Mayor Creasy. I also like phase 3, but I do agree with you that it could be, you know, why bother? In a way, for them, maybe it could be a wider time frame. I certainly would not. That wouldn't stop me from voting for this. And also phase 4, I like that idea. It's almost like a concession from us to the developers, even though it really doesn't affect the dollars any. It's a concession in the way they make their payments. So I like 3 and 4 together.
CEO Gotti, after I interrupted you, would you mind continuing on it now? Thank you.
I think correctly, though. I appreciate your comments. So actually, council, having been given an opportunity to discuss, it came to kind of very close to my recommendations that option 1, to implement the new rates immediately, that's a shock to the market. It's going to hurt the city's reputation, and it does not provide stability to the investment climate in the city. So I don't think that's a good option. Maintain the current rates also puts an unfair burden on today's taxpayer. I don't think that's a good option. And that is what we're really looking for, is to eliminate some of these options, bring you back something that says here's what we propose based on what we've heard, and then we'll go and develop the offsite levy bylaw accordingly. Option 3, to phase in the new rates. I think that is a good option. It's one that's been employed in the past by council. At that time, they did a 5-year phase-in period. To your point, Mayor Creasy, of is 3 years enough? You can look at a different number of years, but of course, the longer you phase in, the more under collection you potentially have, and the greater chance of lost corporate knowledge and mistakes and that sort of thing. Option 4, phase the payment of the offset levies. I think that actually does have a pretty significant benefit on the cash flow for developers for this component of the development, which is of course only a fraction of the overall cost, but it is something. It carries a little bit of risk administratively. It's an additional burden that we have to manage. I believe we can manage it, but there is a little bit of additional risk and work associated with administrating that multiple stage program. And then option 5, if you are looking to incentivize the preparation of lots for homes, I believe that will be your most attractive tax incentive or development incentive program that's available. We have received some presentations from our partners at McEwen, and they've confirmed what we sort of also thought, is that the majority of the tax incentive programs that are employed in Alberta, including those provisions in the MGA that allow for it, are specific to non-residential property. This is your most direct link, I would say, as the city to affect the cost of preparing lots for residential development right here. This is the strongest dial, best tool. And so that one, I'm not going to weigh in and say good idea, bad idea. I think that it is the most likely tool you have to achieve those objectives if they are. I do also just want to follow up. Director Lapointe and I have been talking a little bit, and I was preemptive in saying April 11th. It is April 28th that we will be targeting the full tax incentive discussion for you. And Manager Mitchell will bring back, concurrently with that, some options based on your discussion tonight, with the hope of eliminating some of those. We'll get your direction there, and then we'll prepare the bylaw accordingly for Q2.
Thank you for that. So the one item here, I don't know if it was just because at the end or nobody really seemed to touch on, was option 5. And certainly the dollar amounts seem a little interesting. I'm not sure that I mean, we're trying to base this on reality of infrastructure cost and whatnot, and just for us to arbitrarily pick a figure and throw it across the board doesn't really seem like a logical route to go either. Just so there's no confusion there. There must be some incentive to it, but it escapes me.
So this presentation was initially slated to go forward with the tax incentive presentation. And so the idea was that this is an option that would be instead of one of the tax incentive ones that they were presenting at that time. So this is a developer incentive to try and trigger development of new lots in Lacombe. Instead of giving them a tax incentive, we can give them something that affects their bottom line, that helps incentivize development here in the city. It's just another method.
Appreciate that. Thanks for the clarification. I expect there's many of them that would appreciate the first number at $1 per hectare. Yeah, too. So then I guess we'll look forward towards the end of the month for perhaps some fine tuning and maybe perhaps a hybrid look at the last half of the recommendations in there. Don't narrow it down too far. Very good. Director Lapointe, copy with council update. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Mayor Creasy. Tonight, administration is gathering feedback from council for suggestions to improve the Coffee with Council consultation process. As you know, Coffee with Council was instituted in 2011 to help make council more accessible to residents and businesses while cultivating opportunities to secure timely feedback from community members. The structure has remained essentially the same from its inception, where city representatives answer questions whenever possible. When they can't, they bring those issues forward and do the research and consideration that is due before responding. I mentioned this previously when asked, but the current slate of Coffee with Council sessions were slated or selected to be piggybacked on other suitable traffic building events. For instance, attending music in the park promotes interaction with larger crowds. However, the venue is not the best for discussing matters at length with residents. Coffee with Council requires coordinating administrative resources with various communications, marketing, and event planning activities required. Additionally, the event requires council members and the corporate leadership team to attend to manage citizen inquiries. And of course, you know that 3 Coffee with Council sessions are planned for the upcoming year, including 2 active living fairs and the Chamber of Commerce trade show here in April. With that, I'm open to any feedback or comments you may have for improving the process.
Thanks, Director Lapointe. I believe it may have just been at the last council meeting. There was a couple of councillors that suggested they may have some creative ideas. You know, the time frame is a little short, but did you have an opportunity to glean any of that input just yet?
I have not, so I'd be open to that feedback this evening.
Wonderful. Certainly no expectation that they share it with everyone publicly now, or if they choose to do that, give you that input over the next period of time, but certainly if the options here, if they so choose to. And given the 2 lights that are on, I would suggest the time is now. Councillor Gullickson.
Thank you, Mayor Creasy. I mean, the last active living fair was not well attended by the public. I mean, I thought it was productive for the people I talked to, but the numbers weren't there. The trade show is excellent, I think, as far as engaging with the public. It'd be nice to look at some other opportunities other than the active living fairs. I think they have kind of ran their course, and where registration is being done in different ways and people aren't coming out in the same numbers they used to. So possibly some of the other indoor markets and things like that maybe are a better opportunity for us, because I do think there's value to this. It's just these weren't the right locations.
Thank you, Councillor Hibbs.
Thank you, Mayor Creasy. Yeah, so I would echo the living fairs, both editions I find are just not really delivering, I think, what we want them to. I do agree, however, that the trade show does generally seem to be very well taken up. Of course, you've got a lot of residents, but you've also got a lot of visitors from outside. It's just a high density, like a lot of people are going through there. So I'd like to see us continue that one. However, that being said, I would like to see us change how we do it at the trade show. I do find that we kind of have these placards set up. We have these little tables set up, and depending whether it's Coffee with Council that we're all there or if it's spread out, I feel like we're just waiting to pounce on somebody as soon as they walk through. I don't find it necessarily overly welcoming. I don't really find that there's really a reason to draw people in, and I'd like us to think of a way that we can draw them in. I'd like it to feel more comfortable, a lot less predatory, almost like it does almost feel like that. And I have to worry, like we have some super engaged community members that are afraid of that. But there are a lot of people that are kind of shy and kind of off put by that. And I think we could do a better job somehow of just making it more welcoming, inviting them in, and not feeling like they're, just that all eyes are on them and then we're ready to go. I'd like us to consider maybe something during Lacombe Days. Now, it doesn't necessarily have to mean, like, I know we've done the farmers market during Lacombe Days, but maybe not the farmers market. Well, maybe. But it would be neat to be, I don't know, say part of the scavenger hunt in not just a picture of us, but like actually, you know, that you need to come and see us and like actually engage with us. Because I noticed, for example, the last couple scavenger hunts, it was take a picture of a counselor. Well, they didn't actually even need to find us to do that. They just needed to go online and like screen cap. So that's how they're getting around that. So it was now I realize we didn't pick that, but just there's an opportunity there for engagement, and we were kind of missing it. I'd love to see us do something like set up at the arena, maybe like an area. You know, it's a municipally owned facility. It does have high traffic, and I think that we'd be hitting a whole different level of, you know, the average citizen. The people that are going to be there are going to be maybe different than the ones that go to some other event. And so I'd like us to sort of think outside of what we've always done and think of some new locations, you know, that could really attract some new voices. And I think it is, we've all seen this. If there's some issue that really is driving people to have an opinion, that always really helps. Like, I feel like this trade show is going to be a lot about the proposal that we heard last meeting, the downtown plaza. But like, that's great because that draws people in and they're going to want to share opinions on that. And maybe they'll talk about something else as well. But it's just an idea to bring them in. But I don't have all the answers, but these are just some of my thoughts that I think one of the things that's holding people back from engaging with us is, one, that it's intimidating to even approach us. And two, we're not necessarily always where the people are. If we're relying on them to keep coming to the things that we say we're going to be at, I don't think that that's as successful as we could be. So those are my initial thoughts.
Thank you for that. I myself, I certainly don't have any problem with trying some different locations or venues. And I would like to think that there is some more positive ones than some of the ones that we've used in the past out there. However, it's interesting when I speak with other communities and whatnot, they have a far more controversy-based engagement, I guess is a polite way to put it, than what we do here. And I think that speaks pretty highly in the work that is done in this room, certainly, and outside as well, but certainly inside this room to try and keep all of our business in the public eye and be upfront with people and willing to engage either on a one-to-one basis. I don't think that my time is a whole lot different than everybody else's, all the other elected people in this room, that you don't go out in the community too often without being approached by someone and discussing an item. So I'm not totally convinced that that genuine need for additional engagement is out there. However, if there is some other venues, certainly willing to give it a try and see if there's some magic out there that we haven't tapped just yet. Anyone else? Councillor Connick.
Thank you, Mayor Christie. Just more to your points, like the initial coffee with councils that you were aware were starting when we were first elected. We wanted more accountability, and I think they've been really successful. You're right. It's those first years that we had them, we had tons of people out, and now it's just dropped right off. And it's unfortunate. I would agree with Councillor Hibbs. Maybe we could do something different where it's a little less intimidating. Maybe it's just, I don't know, maybe you come chat with your local councillor and there could be two of us at the outside of No Frills or something, you know, something really unobtrusive, something very simple, less, way more inviting. And they're just two people standing there, and come chat with a councillor, and you might get people on their way to the grocery store. Hey, yeah, you know what? I'm just going to either give my beef or give my kudo. Chances are it's more beef than kudo. But anyways, we might get a little more of that if it's a little more, inviting or less intimidating. So, yeah, I would agree that Active Living Fair is probably not the best choice. The Chamber of Commerce trade show, we should stray the course. But yeah, I don't know what, like Councillor Hibbs says, I don't know what the answer is, but maybe there's something we can come up with that might work a little better.
Well, I think we've all had the 45-minute or hour run for a jug of milk at the grocery store. So that's actually kind of an interesting idea to me. There's only three big ones in town. That might be a good route to go, and a relatively painless thing to implement, I expect. A table and a banner or two. I don't think there's any harm in trying. I would certainly be willing to sit at some of those. Because as it is now, without a banner and whatnot, people are certainly willing to engage. Councillor Hoekstra.
Thanks, Mayor Creasy. I don't have anything brilliant to add other than when I was reading this, I just thought a standalone event, like it doesn't even have to be attached to anything, because being attached to something hasn't been successful the last few years. So is there some way of creating a one, like not 2 times a year, just one standalone talk with your counselor event? I mean, I'm not dissing the grocery store idea. I think that's a good idea too. But is there some clever way that we can, I don't know, have some community forum and invite people to come? Because chances are we're still going to have more attendance than we had at these other fairs. So, and everybody who comes gets a pair of Lacombe socks or something. Just throwing that out there.
Thank you, Mayor Creasy. I appreciate everybody's ideas. I guess even, for example, in the past, with the Rotary Club does a food bank fund drive at the 3 grocery stores. Do you join with that and have a couple of counselors at each of the grocery stores the same night and have a dual purpose? You have food bank fund drive and have 2 counselors at each grocery store. Like, you can expand on that idea, but I think I recall we did budget public input nights at the LMC, and there was literally single digit people showed up. Like, you know, administration's done a lot of creative things to give people the option, and the chamber's been, I think it's been a great success. You know, like we have the police service, we have bylaw, like several different, and I think it's, all due respect, I don't find it overwhelming. I think maybe the amount, I don't think we're out there to jump them. There's coffee, there's treats, there's, you know, I don't know. Do we approach the design of it different to be, come on in, how can we help you or something? Just, I don't know. But there is some ways to join, but the living fair, I think that was maybe off, but the chamber show one I think is great. The farmers markets, you know, there's a lot of people engagement there. Yeah, I think administration's reached out. I think everything goes in phases. So maybe it's just, yeah, anyways, it's my 2 bits.
Thank you. Yeah, we've had lots of talk about the active living fair, and I think that that still has value. It's just a different type of draw than what it is for our purposes. So that might be one we want to readjust. Director Lapointe.
We can certainly approach, you know, the issue through maybe more frequent engagement, make it a little less formal. Again, fewer total counselors in attendance. That could, you know, that may be a way to do it again, and whether that's at the grocery store or, you know, if you're actually having coffee at Anne Maria's, you know, I'm sure there's a number of venues that we could consider. I am intrigued by the standalone event, although I would say that typically if you're holding it around a budget or, you know, those sorts of issues, it seems like we haven't had a whole lot of critical mass there. I do think that if you introduce food, oftentimes you have lots of success. So I wonder if there's an opportunity. Councilor Hibbs talked about Lacombe Days. If you had a pancake breakfast or something like that, where you could actually have people flipping pancakes and engage with the counselors, that may be an opportunity. But I think that's the kind of engagement that you're going to have in order to get people lining up to speak to your counselors. There's food, but there's also an opportunity to engage.
Thank you. Any further comments on this item? Very good. Item 4.3, the extended producer responsibility regulation. Response from the MLA. Director Thompson?
Thanks, Mayor Creasy. Council will recall at the end of February, we had highlighted what we perceived as an oversight in the new extended producer responsibility legislation affecting recycling programs in the province. The legislation indicates that in 2025 for Lacombe, the province through the EPR program will take over our depot, but that the Lacombe is ineligible for a curbside recycling program under the new legislation at all. And we perceive that as an oversight. Other municipalities who currently have a curbside recycling program will have their programs folded into the provincial framework in 2025, and municipalities that don't have any recycling program at all would receive a curbside recycling program by 2026. And so the fact that Lacombe would get none under any of those timelines was an oversight that we'd recommend council direct administration to advocate to our MLA. And so we did do that. We sent a letter to our MLA, and MLA Orr did respond very promptly that he received the letter and had promised to solicit a response from government. And in fact, he did do that. And on March 27th, we did receive a response. Unfortunately, it does confirm that Lacombe is ineligible for a curbside recycling program under the current legislation, and that would be that would be the way it is essentially until 2026, where they may look to review that after 2026. And so this puts Lacombe in a unfair position. Council has previously chosen not to participate in a curbside recycling program due to very real costs. There are issues with costs of such a program. The EPR program is not a choice for Albertans. You have to participate through purchasing goods and services throughout the province, and that all Albertans are paying for that service, including Lacombe residents. Other municipalities will receive a curbside recycling service that Lacombe is not providing under this program, and that citizens in Lacombe will be paying for a service that is being provided to other municipalities. And so since this has become an issue, or we've become aware of this issue, we're aware of a couple other municipalities who are in a similar boat. And so we are reaching out to them and talking to them and kind of formulating possible next steps as a coalition to advance this issue and to advocate to the province to reconsider this decision. And so we just wanted to advise council that this is still on our radar, that we're continuing to pursue change of heart from the province, and that we hope that it does receive some positive feedback in the future. And we want to give council just an update on MLA Orr's response tonight.
Thank you for that. And I, for one, did appreciate his prompt response. However, I find it extremely disappointing that the citizens of Lacombe would be put at a disadvantage on a program that they are forced to participate in because the people in this room have chosen to be responsible with taxpayers' dollars. Their somehow disadvantages is wholly unacceptable, in my opinion. So it'll be interesting to see how this plays out. I have a hard time imagining how they could treat one municipality so much differently than others across the province. Quite ridiculous. Councillor Ross.
Thank you, Mayor Creasy. I guess I would like to see this put out in the media publicly so that the citizens are informed. And since there might be some more motivation prior to an election in the near future for that to be resolved, I think that would be an interesting reply if that was made public with a media response. I would highly encourage that.
Thank you, Councillor Hibbs.
Thank you, Mayor Creasy. That was definitely going to be one of my points. The other point is these other communities that are in a similar boat to us. Is this just something that administration is thinking they're going to be admin sort of trying to, get together and petition, or are we going to involve elected officials in this? I'm just suggesting that there's another level of advocacy that could be happening at this level, but when we don't know who our partners are, it makes things a bit difficult. There is, as part of Alberta municipalities, at least there was, I'm sure there still is, sort of a committee, for lack of a better term, around recycling. And I know that we don't have anybody on that per se, although I have attended that. I was invited to attend it at one time. So there's lots of opportunities there where we could be, sort of harnessing different advocacy. But I can't do that if I don't know who I'm working with. So what is the game plan going forward?
Yes, we will, for sure. Some of these municipalities are only aware of the issue because of our recent contact with them at the end of last week. So I would feel uncomfortable naming them here because some of them aren't actually aware of it. We have talked to actually elected officials at some of them, Councillor Gullickson and I, at our recent Municipal Leaders Caucus, talked to them, and I'd be happy to share with you those via email afterwards. And certainly we would be happy for any support from the elected side.
So just to continue on that, sorry, I guess what I'm really looking for is like a plan. So I'm assuming going forward, I realize this is pretty fresh right now, but going forward, I guess I'd like to see a little bit more of a formal plan as far as what administration is planning on doing and where we as elected can also, know the facts and get involved in the advocacy. So I guess that's what I'm looking for. So while I do appreciate that sharing of the other communities, what I'm looking for is a little bit more formal of a plan. So, but I think I think this is really important. Like, I really think this is important. So we do need to definitely get going on this. As was mentioned, elections coming up right away. So now's the time to get this addressed right before, just, it is timely.
Councillor Dallas?
Thank you, Mayor Creasy. I guess I just want to say thank you to administration, because I think the residents of this community are very lucky to have you advocating on their behalf so early on and so quickly on this. The rest of us as council, we can certainly continue that, and we can encourage residents to reach out to our candidates as well as our current officials. So I think we should be definitely doing that, because this is very much a provincial issue, and it will be difficult to solve on our own, I think, based on the information we've been provided. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Ross?
Thank you, Mayor Creasy. At the time when we dissolved recycling, I think that was just prior to AUMA at that particular year, and it stood out throughout the AUMA quite, because we made, as council, we made an informed decision by information given to us by administration as to the cost. And as other councils alluded to, I was going to presentations on recycling. It was cost per ton. It was the amount of product that's actually being recycled. As I think Council Hopes just went to presentations on environmental recycling. And I think that needs to be reiterated to the citizens of Lacombe, how we based our decision on why, and we did it with the decision upon cost, and wasn't taken lightly. So I think it would be great to see a full story, like a full media endorsement on the history of recycling and the decisions and pertaining to why. And I think this would be a great opportunity to inform the citizens as to why we made that decision very quickly and abruptly, because I think that council meeting was a Monday and the contract was due for renewal on the Friday, and we dissolved it very quickly. So thank you.
Thank you for that, Councillor Ross. One thing, we did not eliminate recycling, we eliminated curbside pickup. Forgive me for being a broken record, but those are drastically different things. But your point is well taken. Councillor Gullickson?
Thank you, Mayor Creasy. I think this issue will resolve itself eventually, because it's such a, like, this ruling that they say we won't be getting recycling, but to have to pay for it is just ridiculous. So I think it will solve itself. and we just have to stay vigilant. And I think what we did last week was a good start to get to where we can make that plan that we all want, and to get organized and lobby a little bit. And I think it'll be overturned quite quickly because it just is totally unfair.
Yes, I look forward with great anticipation how this EPR will transform the overall recycling within the province and be equally as successful it is has it been in other jurisdictions, and we will no longer have any municipal waste to worry about. I mean, I hate to be sarcastic about it, but it's one thing to be treated fairly amongst other citizens, but the whole idea of this escapes me. Councillor Hibbs.
Sorry, Mayor Creasy, I just had one more thought. The Alberta Municipalities Convention coming, I guess the next real big one would be in the fall. So that might be sort of a tool or avenue as well to work on some advocacy for this, because obviously it'll come to the whole convention floor. It could be like a resolution, I guess, an opportunity to work with some of those other municipalities that you mentioned, and really sort of make this kind of potentially big news if it hasn't been resolved by then. Because like I said, I really do think this is something that we need to take quite seriously. And if it affects other municipalities, then there's greater strength in it.
Thank you. I think that concludes our extended producer responsibility regulation update. See any other lights on? And then we did add in an item 4.4. And I'm sorry, I did not write down what it was in my notes. Someone wanted to have FCM, and that was brought forth by Councillor Hoekstra. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Mayor Creasy. I just had some questions regarding who attends FCM and what is our actual policy as a council regarding that, because following the council meeting on March 13th, it came out that 4 people are going and then 3 people are going. I just would like to be transparent to all of us. Who goes? When do we go? Is there a procedure? Is there a policy?
Fair enough. CAO Gowdy.
There is no policy. Each individual councillor is responsible for managing their own budget. In the past, there was a longstanding practice, I would say, because there was limited funds that would not allow for more than, I think, 2 councillors per event, that it fell to the mayor to adjudicate and balance who got to go to one and try and make up for if people couldn't make it to a certain one. And I'd say on behalf of the mayor, I can see how that would be a difficult dance sometimes. And so council did choose to increase your expenses available for travel, conference, training, education, and you are the master of that portion of the budget. It is reported monthly, so you're accountable to the public. But if you choose to go to FCM one year or the next year or any year or no years, that's your choice. We would certainly want to see there being some attendance at all of the events, including, last year's event was in Regina, and it was great to have a number of councillors there. I think it was a valuable event, just as it would be in Calgary or Toronto or anywhere else. And so we would want to make sure that council is kind of getting equal representation at these events, but it's up to individual councillors to elect whether to go or not.
I appreciate you suggesting in my regard that I either choose or not say who or cannot go. However, in all reality, given the changes that we've had in FCM last 2 years, it became almost a very interesting balancing act. We've missed out on a couple. I'm going to say probably more desirable locations than perhaps others in the opinions of many. And therefore, anyone that expressed interest in going this time, because of the budget changes, there was allowance for them to go. I don't think that we were not being transparent about it. But if anybody has issue with either number of times or whatnot, that certainly is the writing instrument is the budget. So I'm not really sure how you would like to continue. If there's any other information you would like to have, Councillor Hoekstra, but that's just kind of where it's at. There was nothing underhanded or, in my opinion, out of line here. Certainly in the past, it has been a practice. And I think in a what I'll call a normal cycle, 4-year cycle, it works out quite nicely. However, for a variety of reasons, the biggest one was missing out on 2 of the events. In my opinion, warranted some changes in that regard. So, Legislative Coordinator Balabono.
Thank you, Mayor Creasy. I just wanted to add to CEO Gowdy. There was a rotation in the prior to COVID, just to make sure that Mayor Creasy knew who had gone to the previous years every time he was deciding on who went. And with COVID, it kind of threw everything off a bit.
Thank you. I guess while we're on the subject, perhaps you could just refresh my memory who is attending on the city's behalf this year. I believe that the CEO Gowdy and myself are both attending. Who else is going?
Yes, Mayor Creasy. I believe Councillor Connick, Councillor Dallas, and yourself.
Thank you. Councillor Hibbs.
Thank you, Mayor Creasy. So just to clarify, and this was somewhat what I was asking last time. So we have just a budget. It's up to us to decide how we're going to spend it. I'm going to assume, however, that if we go to FCM, then you probably won't have budget left to go to Alberta municipalities. Is that correct, or am I mistaken?
CEO Gowdy.
I would have to look at your most recent expense claims and last year's expenses for AUMA. But I believe you could probably, if those are the only 2 events that you attended, I think you could probably make both of the events work within your annual budget. But if you would like a more detailed review, we'll just have to look at the expense claims and do that analysis for you and let you know you're fine.
Okay, that would be interesting, just because I remember bringing this up coming out of last year for budget discussions this year. And my concern is I had done nothing particularly extravagant, and yet I was over budget. And I felt that that was unfair, that the budget wasn't reflecting, because I was selected to go to FCM. Of course, I went, like I said, like it wasn't extravagant, but it looked like I overspent, and I didn't think that that was fair for anybody. However, I also, on the flip side, don't want to put people in a position where they're going to have to pick one or the other. I feel like it might be the case where, nobody's going to Alberta municipalities, for example, because, given the choice. So I guess I would like a little bit more detail as far as, being able to actually afford to go to both of those. That was, I guess, kind of my point from last time, and I guess I didn't make it very clearly, but that is my concern. Thank you.
Thank you. Does anyone have anything additional on that item? Other than our single in-camera item, that leaves us with the next meetings. All our regular council meetings at 5:30 here in council chambers. And coming up rather quickly, Tuesday, April 11th. Once again, that's Tuesday after holiday Monday. And then Monday, April 24th, particularly special day in Alberta. And Monday, May the 8th. I think that takes us to our in-camera item, does it not? Councillor Dallas?
Motion to go in camera.
Thank you very much.